Now, South Carolina Republican Senator Lindsey Graham and Connecticut Democrat Senator Richard Blumenthal. Thank you all for being here this morning. We know that you have traveled to Ukraine together, so let's talk about what's going on there, because now you have this package coming back to the Senate. Your fellow colleague, Republican J.D. Vance, he's got some questions about this. He says in a piece in the New York Times that the math doesn't add up. He says Ukraine needs more soldiers than it can field, even with draconian conscription policies, and it needs more materiel than the United States can provide. The sooner Americans confront this truth, the sooner we can fix this mess and broker for peace. He says even with us ramping up our industrial production here, we're not getting a fraction of what Ukraine says it needs. So why prolong this?
I think that pessimism underestimates America. You know, we're the strongest, greatest country in the history of the world. We can produce the kind of artillery shells, the long-range artillery, the ATACMs that are necessary, the air defense, Patriot systems. Iran needs many more of them to protect its cities. And we also can enforce sanctions and seize and sell Russian assets to provide more resources to Ukraine. So we're building, and this measure, strongly bipartisan, I think sends a message to the world. The foreign minister of Lithuania yesterday said, "Good to have you back, America." I think America is back on offense, and this sign that we can come together in a bipartisan way for our national security and send a message to Vladimir Putin, to Xi, to the dictators of the world. Too soon to be popping your champagne corks. America is going to defend democracy.
So Senator Vance, though, works through the numbers when it comes to Patriot missiles, 155 millimeter shells. He talks about all these things and says, even if we ramp up to the goals that we have for next year, we're not even going to get to like a third of what Ukraine says they need. This morning, you got the Russian Foreign Ministry saying out there it's going to be a fiasco, it's turning into Vietnam, and that we're funding something that's just going to lead to more lost lives.
Well, if you want American military members to stay out of the fight with Russia, help Ukraine. If they go into a NATO nation, Russia, we're in a fight. So with all due respect to Senator Vance, he's wrong. We were told within 4 days Kyiv would fall.
But is he wrong about the math?
Yeah,
is he wrong about the production?
He's wrong about the whole concept that we can't deal with multiple problems. In World War II, we fought the Germans and the Japanese. We have an industrial base that needs to be retooled. But the Ukrainian military, with our help, has killed about 50% of the combat power of the Russians. This is the year of more. They're going to have more weapons, but we also want them to have new weapons, ATACMs, to knock the bridge down between Crimea and Russia. They're going to have F-16s. So this idea, give up on Ukraine makes the world safer. If you pull the plug on Ukraine because you don't have enough capability, there goes Taiwan. The Ukrainians are fighting like tigers. This aid package has a loan component to it. This would not have passed without Donald Trump. I want to thank the House Speaker and Hakeem Jeffries working together in a bipartisan fashion to give weapons to Ukraine to fight a fight that matters to us. And President Trump has created a loan component to this package that gives us leverage down the road. So this idea that we can't help Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan at the same time, I reject that. I reject it totally.
Okay,
and he's wrong on the numbers also, because the Defense Production Act, which we used in the Korean War, can convert civilian production capacity to produce the artillery, the vehicles, all of the stuff that the industrial base can and will produce if it's given the right demand signal. And we know on the Armed Services Committee, where I serve, that a consistent demand signal is necessary to produce the kind of investments that is necessary for those numbers to change.
Okay, well, we're not there. The tooling up has not happened.
Thank God that our parents and grandparents didn't have that attitude in World War II. Hey, we can only fight one thing at a time.
He's not saying that. What he's saying is that that Ukraine doesn't have the manpower it needs,
Go. I just got back. I was there 2 weeks ago. They changed their conscription laws. They've got all the manpower they need. They need weapons. Is what they don't have is weapons. They've just added 200,000 people to the army by changing their conscription laws. It's one thing to talk about Ukraine over here. It's another thing to go. I challenge J.D. Vance to go to Ukraine and get a briefing from the Ukrainian military and talk to the Ukrainian people, then Tell me what you think.
All right, well, maybe you all can go together. Yeah, he could go on your next trip.
Yeah, we're going back. You're welcome to come. Quit talking about things you don't know anything about until you go.
Okay, we'll wait to hear his response on that. I want to ask about something else that you all have worked on, and that's passing FISA, because this happened late Friday night. There's been a lot of blowback to that. Your colleague, Mike Lee, who is conservative and in some ways would have a libertarian bent, is very worried about where this is going to go. Like you all, he's an attorney. He said this as a warning about FISA getting passed without a warrant requirement for Americans.
Not only are the bill's purported reforms mostly fake, and where they're not fake, they're woefully inadequate, egregious Fourth Amendment violations against U.S. citizens will increase dramatically.
It's not just that conservative senator, it's also the ACLU joining ranks with him, saying this. Last night, Congress reauthorized and expanded Section 702, creating even more ways for the government to secretly surveil us. Our leaders should protect our rights, not make it easier for the government to trample on them. As I said, you're both attorneys. How do you answer this question about the Fourth Amendment, warrantless searches for Americans who know there's evidence out there in the public tens of thousands of times this has been abused against American citizens?
I have great respect for Mike Lee, as I do for J.D. Vance and for the ACLU. The problem here is that the adversaries that we have around the world who want to do us harm have to be stopped. And this kind of surveillance of foreign adversaries, not Americans, it applies only to Americans if they're in touch with those foreign adversaries, is absolutely necessary. 60% of the president's morning briefing, what he sees when he comes in, first thing in the morning, comes from this kind of surveillance. And it's not a perfect bill. In an ideal world, we wouldn't need it. And I think that the Department of Justice has shown that it will eliminate some of the abuses that have been the source of complaints from the ACLU and others, justifiably, but it is necessary in today's really dangerous, daunting world.
Okay, so Senator Dick Durbin, a top Democrat, had an amendment to plug in that warrant piece of this. You all, I think, both voted against that.
Yeah, totally.
So, yes, we all understand the struggles of national security and those kinds of things, but constitutional rights are sacred for a reason.
We're at war, in case you missed it. I've never seen more threats to the homeland than I do right now. The FBI director says everywhere he looks, he sees blinking lights. 702 applies to foreign people on foreign soil that we believe mean us harm.
But often scoops up Americans in those searches.
Yes, we're following some guy overseas who we think to be a terrorist. If he's talking to somebody in the United States, we can query the system to find out what's up. Maybe they're threatening me. I'm on the threat list. One of the reasons that they told me about what they want to do to me is they captured something overseas. So if two foreigners are talking about Boeing or Lindsey Graham, we can query the system and find out what they're talking about. If they think I'm involved with them, they have to get a warrant. But before 9/11, the FBI and the CIA could not talk to each other. We're at war. They're coming to kill us all. We have a broken border. I want to know what they're talking about over there before they kill us here. And if you shut this thing down, you've turned the war into a crime. We're not fighting a crime. We're fighting a bunch of people who would kill all of us if they could get here. So when you intercept information from a foreigner overseas talking about attacking America, I want to know what they're talking about. And if you believe an American's involved, you have to get a warrant. We're at war. This is intelligence gathering. These people also wanted us out of Afghanistan. I love Mike Lee. I like J.D. Vance. But they all said we need to leave Afghanistan. Here's what I will tell you. If you give Putin Ukraine, he will not stop. This is not about containing NATO. And if you give him Ukraine, there goes Taiwan, because China's watching to see what we do. And if you shut down 702, you're making it so easy for the terrorists to talk to each other about killing us. We're at war.
I think it's different to talk about shutting down 702 and instituting a warrant requirement involving Americans.
The warrant
we can agree on that.
shuts it down, is what I'm trying to tell you. If there's information about American picked up, you have to get a warrant if you think the American's up to no good helping the terrorists. But I want to know what they're talking about when it comes to Lindsey Graham.
Two quick points. First of all, I've been a prosecutor for most of my career. I was the U.S. Attorney in Connecticut, then I was Attorney General of Connecticut for 20 years. I know what it takes to get a warrant. And often these kinds of surveillance activities have to be done quickly, expeditiously, without going to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court to get a warrant. I have great respect for the need to have strong oversight. We need to do a better job in the Congress of overseeing these programs so there are no potential abuses, because nothing's more important than privacy.
Exactly. We got to leave it there, but you can understand there are a number of Americans who are concerned about the conflict between those things and the fact that the FISA court has had abuses. So we know that you all can now have lunch with Senators Lee and Vance.
Attacked,
yes, as we all are.
Any minute now.
Okay. Well, let's hope that is not true. Senators, good to see you both. We know that there are imposing threats at all times. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, joining